My name is Sergei Boutenko, and I'm passionate about wild edibles. When I was about 13 years old, my mom and dad pulled my sister and I out of school and told us that we were going to hike from Mexico to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail. This trail spans from the Mexican border through California, Oregon, Washington, up to Canada. We were novice at hiking, didn't really have a whole lot of experience, and so we grossly underestimated how much food we would need on this journey. And as a result, we started running into severe food shortages. In order to complete the trail, we had to improvise. So this led my family to learn how to forage. And for the bulk of the trail, we were utilizing wild edibles and supplementing our food with those weeds. This was a miraculous discovery in my life because my two favorite things were hiking and eating, and still are today. And when I found out that I could do both at the same time, I've never looked back since. Unfortunately, wild edibles have a lot of fear surrounding them. They get a lot of bad press in the media. There's movies made about how people ate wild edibles and then perished. And so there's a lot of fear that prevents people from going out and enjoying all that wild edibles have to offer. And for this reason, I'm making this video to show people just a fraction of what's out there. It is my hope that after watching this, you will be inspired and compelled to go out and safely forage for food. One of the most common questions I get asked when I travel and teach lectures about wild edibles is, why are weeds so great? Why should we care? Foraged food is wildly beneficial. First and foremost, it's free food. Free food. It has the potential to save you a lot of money on your grocery bill. In the summer months, May through September, I forage a lot of my food and thus am able to save thousands of dollars in grocery expenses. Weeds and wild edibles also are healthier for you and the environment. For starters, wild edibles and weeds, they have longer root systems. They are as nature intended them to be. These longer roots can go below the depleted topsoil and draw out vital nutrients and vitamins that your body's in need of. Weeds and wild edibles also grow in soils that have not been depleted to the extent of common farms and grocery store food. Wild edibles are also the textbook definition of local food. I once read that a banana travels roughly 3,500 miles to get from where it's grown into your meal. And I think that is hugely wasteful because there's a lot of fuel that gets used up. Wild edibles, on the other hand, are completely local. The only energy expended in collecting wild edibles is your own, because you have to physically walk outside of your house in order to pick a dandelion, for example. I think that's a huge benefit of wild edibles. Another benefit to weeds and wild edibles is they allow us to spend more time in nature. And that nature exposure is crucial to our health and happiness. As society progresses, we spend more time on Facebook, we spend more time in front of the computer. And I know for my personal sanity, it helps to balance that time with time spent in nature. And when we're outside looking for weeds and wild edibles, we're doing exactly that. Being outside in and of itself is healthy. We're getting fresh air, we're getting vitamin D from the sun, and when we're crawling around digging, looking for wild edibles, we're exercising. Lastly, when we forage with friends and family, we create stronger bonds, and this is a huge benefit to me that surrounds the whole wild edible thing, is we get to do it with our loved ones and thus improve our relationships. Right behind me, as you can see, there's a beautiful pond full of cattails. And cattails are a really great staple food for any forager. They have a lot of calories, and those calories are sustenance, they're energy. And today I want to show you all the parts that are edible as well as how to eat them. To my left, you can see the second year growths of the cattails. They're this kind of fuzzy, white, cottony stuff. You definitely don't want to eat this part. If anything, you can use it as insulation if you get cold and say you're stranded out in the woods. You can use this in your sleeping bag, stuff it in your sleeping bag, and it'll keep you warm. It's a good identifying characteristic of the cattail. And clearly you wouldn't eat this because it would be very unpleasant. It's just a way to spot cattails from far away. Today what we're after is the green parts. There's several edible parts. There's the root stalk, the tender stem, as well as the green seed pod. When harvesting cattails, you gotta make sure that the water source is clean. You definitely don't wanna harvest cattails from like a golf course pond because they draw up nutrients and with that pesticides from the water that they grow in. And so it's a good idea to double check that the pond you're harvesting from has clean water in it. I'm just gonna hop right in and show you what I'm after. Here's a nice specimen right here. While all parts of the cattail are edible, you want to stick primarily to eating the tender parts, which is going to be the root stock. Then you're going to have a light green section that's tender, and you're also going to have the seed pod. To get to the root stock and the tender parts, you're going to peel the outer leaves, and right away you're going to notice this sort of slimy texture. This cattail slime is the same as aloe gel. It's very good for the skin. If you ever get a cut or some sunburn, you put the slime on the sunburn and it's healing. It's got soothing properties. It will make cuts heal faster. So if you peel back the layers, kind of like an onion or a leek, you will find that it will get more and more tender as we go down. And you want to get to that part where it will bend and break. And this tender part is the part that you would eat. Just like that. Kind of has the consistency and taste of a cucumber. Another part that we're after is the seed pod. So before it gets cottony and brown, the seed pod is green and very tender. And it's like the wild version of corn on the cob. So if you peel back at the very top, you will see that there's this nice little green seed pod. Kind of glistens in the sun. And basically this part right here, if you were to boil it, you could eat it just like corn on the cob, and it would fall right off the woody stem. There'd be tender parts that would just come right off. So today we're going to be after all of the tender parts of the stem as well as the cob. One. So today we're going to be harvesting this part as well as other tender parts on the cattail. Here I've pulled a couple cattails out of the pond. The edible parts again are the seed pod, the root stalks can be boiled in soups, and then in general the inner leaves that are tender are going to be great in salads. So I'm going to go ahead and unravel it and show you how to get to them. It should also be noted that cattails are water loving. They do have a poisonous look-alike, which is a water iris, but cattails grow like an onion or a leek, where their leaves grow around one another, whereas irises, they come out like a palm frond. So irises are going to be more two-dimensional and cattails are three-dimensional. So as we peel back these layers, we're going to eventually get to the tender parts, and those are the parts that we are after. You can see this part is very flexible. And so we keep going until it basically wants to break off. And that is the part right there that I'm going to chop up in a salad and enjoy. You can eat it raw, boiled, cooked, whatever. It's great as a trailside nibble. At this stage in life, the rootstock is a little bit woody, so I'm going to focus on these tender parts right here. There we go again. We just peel it off until it is so tender that it just breaks right off. There we go, right about there. That's the part we're after. And then repeat, repeat, repeat. Boom. Again, right here we have that seed pod in its early stage of growth. We're going to want that as well. Peel back some of the leaves. And that's going to be our corn on the cob. Sometimes you have to go further than you actually think in order to get to that part where it just breaks off. But once it does break off, you can be certain that it's very tender and very pleasant to eat. One more layer. There we go. So here we have our calorie-rich cattail shoots, and we also have the light green young cattail heads. We're going to boil the heads and make the shoots into a salad.